Alrighty, let's understand HTML. Why is it used and how do you write the syntax for it? HTML defines the structure of your website. What do I mean by structure? I basically mean what should be placed after what before what. For example, here there is a top bar at the top, there is an image after that, there is some text and button. This is the structure of your website. What all should be placed on your website is what HTML defines. There are two jargons that you need to know of before you're starting. Number one, something called tags, and number two, something called attributes. Let's understand tags first and then try to implement them. These are what is called the popular tags in HTML. If you remember from a few minutes ago, when I went to google.com and I tried to look at the code of this website, right click inspect, I saw a bunch of tags here, a div tag, a style tag. Trying to find a better one here. Let's see. An A tag. These are all the primitives that HTML gives you to create a website like this. Will it be a pretty website like this? No. HTML gives you primitives just to create these things, not style them. For styling them, we use CSS, but for creating them, this is a good subset of tags that are enough to create at least the Zerodha landing page, maybe much more. All of these, if you know, you're in a decent spot to create very basic websites. But Harkirat, where do I write these? How do I write these? Let's try to write a bunch of these in a file and go from there. So I would urge you at this point, if you have already installed Visual Studio Code, I would urge you to create an empty folder in any sort of file system, in any sort of folder in your file system. I am going to create a new folder here in the 100x devs folder. This is basically the folder where I put all of my cohort projects. I'm going to create a new folder here, going to call it simple Zerodha app. You can call yours whatever you want. Create this empty folder here and then go to Visual Studio Code and open this specific folder in Visual Studio Code. Simple Zerodha app, open, and I see this specific folder opened in my IDE. Now here I can add an HTML file, a JavaScript file, and start to edit it. But what is this specific environment? It's basically similar to Notepad, a place where I can put my files and edit them. Let me create a new file here, call it index.html. And now if I go back to my folder, if I go to simple Zerodha app, I see an index.html here. How did I create this? From my IDE. Let me start to add some basic text here, some basic tags here, and see if they actually appear on my website, or was I able to create a website. Let me start simply by simply writing hi there here and saving this file. I have an index.html file. I have hi there written there. Let me open this file in Google Chrome. Usually HTML files will by default open in your default browser, which for me is Google Chrome. If I double click on this, I see in the URL bar, not google.com. What do I see? I see the path to my index.html file. And what do I see rendered here? I see hi there, which is the same thing I put here in my index.html file. If I put something else here and save it, if I refresh, I see the same thing here. So as you can see, even without any HTML tag, I was able to start to create my website. The problem is, or the need of a tag is, it gives you some better structure to your website. For example, if I want to put an image below this, I can't really do that using just text. I need to add an image tag here, or like some HTML tag here, which is why even though this is good, this is not enough. Like writing raw text here isn't enough to create any website, which is why you will need to start to experiment with these HTML tags. Let's begin with a very simple one. Let me write this div hi there, and then another div hi there too, and save this file. What have I done? I have created two HTML tags now, inside which I have put hi there, rather than putting them in raw text right here. Why is this beneficial? Now you will see, if I refresh this page, let me put these side to side. If I now refresh this page, I see hi there followed by hi there too, versus if I remove these div tags, I see them side by side. So why do I need the div tag, or why do I need tags in general? If I want to create some sort of a weird structure for my website, which every website will have, right? No website is simply text followed by text. There are buttons, there are divs, there are spaces between them. For that, you need tags. The most popular one, the most basic one, the one that you will see everywhere. If you remember, in google.com, what was the most popular tag we saw everywhere? It was div. What does it stand for? It stands for one division of your page, which basically means one full line, full width of your page. It will take, so if you create a div and write any text inside, that div will take the whole width and the text inside will sort of appear there. Harkirat, what if this text is really long? It will just overflow into the next file, next line. So all of this now is div 1, all of this is div 2. Harkirat, can I also see, similar to google.com, my code here? Yes. If I click on inspect, you will see a div tag, a div tag. Inside the first div tag, you will see hi there, whatever. Inside the second div tag, you see this. So have I now created something similar to google.com? Theoretically, yes. If I go to google.com, click on inspect, I see some HTML and a bunch of divs. If I go to my website and go to inspect, I see HTML and a bunch of divs. Harkirat, where did this tag come from? Where did this tag come from? Don't worry about it. You only wrote this much code. Somehow HTML head come from somewhere. Don't worry about from where. This is your code. This is how it gets rendered inside Google Chrome. This is how you can create a very basic sort of a website. Doesn't do anything. It's pretty empty. So let's add some functionality to it and let's slowly incrementally understand these tags. Let me take you through these tags from top to bottom really quickly. Going to position the tags on the left. Let's start with the first one called HTML. Oh, oopsie daisy. Alrighty, I've divided my window into 3 parts here. Let's go through all of these tags really quickly, understand why they're used and if they're important. First one, HTML, not important at all. It's basically a tag to put all of your code inside. But as you saw, even if I remove this and put whatever here, and if I refresh the website would still automatically inject an HTML tag and a head tag and a body tag itself. So even if you don't write it, it's fine. You don't worry about it almost ever. So feel free to ignore. But what is its purpose? Your whole website, everything inside in your website, just structure it this way. HTML and something called the head and something called the body. These are the 3 sort of important high level structural tags that are good to know. Put some, like the whole content of your website effectively inside this body tag. Put some metadata information inside the head tag. And even if you don't define a structure like this, as you saw, even if I write simply text here or just begin by writing divs, refresh the page, it automatically gets added here. A head tag, a HTML tag, head tag and body tag. And where does my content, the actual content of the page go? It goes inside the body tag. So the first 3 of them, head, HTML and body minus the title, these 3 are simple structural tags. Just define where, this is where you put the meat of your code that gets rendered here. This place you put some metadata. What is metadata, Harkirat? The title tag is one of the metadata things that I talk about. The thing that you see here at the top, if I go to google.com, what do I see? I see Google written here, but for myself, I see index.html. If I want to change that, I use the title tag and I add whatever. If I add Google here and I refresh, this says Google. So what is the goal of the title tag? It is whatever is written inside gets rendered here at the top of the tab. What is the goal of the head tag? All this metadata information that doesn't necessarily need to get rendered here, but just needs to be put here or for some other purposes, you put in the head tag. And what is the body tag? Where you put the meat of your code base. Okay? Let's begin with the meat of our code base. How do you write the things that actually render texts, buttons, fonts here? So for that, the first one is the divs and the spans. Divs we already discussed a bit. If I have a div in my website and I add a hi there or whatever there, it just takes 100% of the space. In most cases, we will see how you can change that later on, but it just takes all the space and you can put whatever you want inside. Can you put a div inside a div? Yes, you can. I can say div, hi there. Inside there is one div called hello, and then there's another div called hello2. If I refresh the page, can you guess how things would look like? Where would hi there be? Where would hello be? Where would hello2 be? Let me clean this up a bit. Let me remove all the extra tags for now, body and HTML. Let us just focus on this much code. What do we have? We have a top level div inside which I have a hi there, and then I have two more divs. One has hello, one has hello too. What will happen if I refresh this? Let's make it even simpler. What will happen if I do this? Most probably you guessed it. Hello followed by hello too. I have first this div, second this div. Both of these divs are inside another div, the parent div. Now parent div does not have anything, but I'm going to add some style here. Even if you don't understand it, it's fine. We will understand this in the next slide when we go to CSS. But just to show you guys, okay, what does the outer div have? This all place is taken by the outer div, and what place does the inner div take? The first one takes this whole line, the second one takes this whole line. Okay, let me remove this, however, to keep things simple and stick with just HTML for now, no CSS. If this is a div, question might be, Harkirat, what if I want to structure these things separately, but want them in the same line? For that, you need a span. Again, you don't really use any of this in reality. This is all 12th grade, 11th grade school stuff. Okay, what is the difference between div and a span? And the answer is, something like this. If I convert the inner children to spans, you will see they appear right next to each other. So what is a span? Okay, I will take only as much space as I need. Hello only needs this much space. Whatever else sibling needs to come can come right next to me. Doesn't need to overflow to the next line. That's the high level difference between div and a span. Do you ever worry about this? No. But when you're learning HTML, CSS and JavaScript, when you're answering questions in 11th and 12th, standard question is, what is the difference between div and a span? Div takes up whole space. Span takes up only as much space as it needs. So pick and choose. You might ask, why do I need spans if I can just simply do this? The answer is, yeah, you can simply do this. As you can see, it gives you the same output. But generally, in a few places, you will see you didn't, for example, here, I didn't really need the outer div, right? I still added it. You still add it for like better structuring. You don't necessarily need this outer div. Even if I remove the outer div, look at the final page for this input. Now let me remove the outer div. Now look at the final page. Looks the same. So you don't necessarily need all of these divs, but good to structure your page well. Okay? Every div you can think of as a separate section of your project. For example, on the Zerodha landing page, this will probably be a top level div. It will have two sort of spans inside, span 1, span 2 maybe, but this will be a top level div. This will be a 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 div. So this is how you can structure, or the use case of divs in your code base. Okay? Next thing is H1, a few tags that let you write text that is slightly bigger. For example, if I go here and rather than, let me remove everything. Let's keep things simple. What happens if I write H1 hi there? You will see very big text came. Why? Because H1 stands for heading 1. If I make this H2, slightly smaller text came. If I make this H3, even smaller, so on and so forth. I can go down to H6, and that's really small heading. But all of these stands for headings. You can choose the size. That's what H1 to H6 are used for. They let you sort of style your page without CSS. We will see later that you can use CSS and do something like style, font, size, whatever, 100, 1000, and that gives you a very big text that's a little too big. So you can actually just use CSS to achieve this. But if you want to achieve this without CSS, you want to increase the size, decrease the size purely using HTML, is when you will use H1 to H6 tag. P tag stands for paragraph. It's basically when you want to, again, write some text. You know whatever you're putting inside is just going to be a text, or more specifically a really long text. Then you put it inside. That's why it's called paragraph. Harkirat, do I need this? What if happens if I remove this? Looks the same. What happens if rather than a P, I use a div? Still looks the same. These are just standard. Back in the day, people felt like, or like whoever created websites or was the creator of HTML felt like, these are primitives people would use. Do you need it? Not really. As you saw, P or div or no fonts, no outer tags literally gave you the same output. So really doesn't matter, but okay. Good to know popular tags to keep in mind. Image. Now this is a new one. This is something you need. This image that you saw, zerodha.com/static/images/landing.png, I can actually bring this to my machine and render it on my website as well. Let's see how you can do that. I'm first going to save this image, and I'm going to save it in the simple Zerodha app folder. You should do the same. Save it in your downloads folder, eventually move it to the simple Zerodha app folder. If I now look at my simple Zerodha app folder, it has the index.html file. It also has this landing1.png. Let me change its name to photo.png. I have this image. Now I need to put this image inside my website. Let me write a simple hi there at the top. And then I'm going to use the image tag now. Image source equal to / what was the name? Photo.png / image. If I write this code base, what will happen? You will see it says hi there, empty image, broken image. Why, can you guess? Photo.png, photo.png. Maybe I don't need / here. There you go. Image source photo.png. Harkirat, why did you put a slash initially? We will see later on. But this thing, what does it do? Renders, as you can see, an image here. Now this is a much bigger image. We have to make it smaller. For that you will need CSS. But since we don't have access to CSS right now, what is the ugly way for me to make this image smaller? I'm going to do something very ugly now. Okay, I'm going to take this photo, make it smaller, take a screenshot of this, and replace my photo.png with this screenshot that I just took. Now if I refresh, I see nice small image here at the top. I see hi there, and right next to it I see the image. Kirat, why don't you see one below the other? Because I haven't yet wrapped the first one inside a div. If I wrap hi there inside a div and then put the image, then what will I see? Let me make this. Let's go back to default configuration here. There we go. And let's just stay full screen. All right. Now if I refresh, I see hi there, and below it I see the image. Why? Because this is what the code looks like now. The code is hi there here inside a div. So the div took up the complete width followed by the image. The image still is pretty big. We will see how we can make it smaller later on. But for now, it's a nice sort of landing page-ish. This is not in the center of the page. So let's introduce another tag here called the center tag. No one uses this. Not really recommended to use this. As you can see, it's also in red here. But let's use it. Let's wrap our image inside the center tag. And now if I refresh and go full screen, you can see image appears in the center of the page. So we're getting pretty close here. We've the meat of the page we've written. This is the Zerodha landing page. The image is in the center. Our image is in the center. I still have to put a few things above and below, but we're slowly getting there. That's the image tag. Let's move on. A tag. Now this, some of you might have heard of it. Some of you might not have heard of it. A tag is basically, okay, if I want to take a person from one page to another, when they click on a button, click on some text, is when you use the A tag. For example, I'm going to write ahref equal to google.com. Go to Google and save. Let me remove at least the hi there from the top. So I have an image followed by I have a space href equal to this, go to Google. What is href, Akirat? We will come to in the next slide. These are what are called attributes. But what does it say? It says ki bro, anytime someone or the browser understands ki bhai, anytime there is an a tag with an href, whatever body is inside this a tag, if the user clicks on it, the user will go to this specific ref. For example, if I now open the website and I look at the go to Google button, not a button exactly, it's sort of text, but it's, as you can see, it's blue in color. If I hover over it, I get my mouse pointer changes because the browser understands. Okay, this is sort of a link, and if someone clicks on it, google.com opens. Kirat, what if I wanted to open in another tab? So you can just keep playing with like the attributes that the href tag or the a tag gives you, but specifically the thing that I just asked, okay, how do we make sure that when the person clicks on it, it opens in another tab? The answer is you add target underscore blank here. Target equal to underscore blank. Harkirat, how would I understand this? How would I know this? You would Google it. If someone asks you, okay, bhai, when clicking on this should take you to another page, you Google it. A on click open in new page. No one understands these, like remembers these from the top of your head. You just Google it. How to open a link in a new tab with HTML and JavaScript. If I click on it, what does it say? href equal to this, target equal to underscore blank. That is exactly what I added here as well. Okay, na? This code, exactly the same. Only this one takes you to google.com. This one takes you to a different website. If I refresh this page now and go to Google, it opens in a new tab. My original tab, you guys probably cannot see it, but okay. If I click here, go to Google, it opens in a new tab. If I close the tab, I still have my index.html page. So that's the goal of the A tag. Again, not really very popularly used. Probably we don't need it today here in the Zerodha page. Inputs, buttons, bold, italics, center. So we've discussed center. Let's quickly discuss bolds and italics. So it's, as the name suggests, supposed to make your font slightly bold. If I do B, hi there, this font becomes bold. If I do I, hi there, font becomes italic, which means slightly slant. I can also do both of them. So I can do a B tag inside which I have an I tag followed by a /B. If I refresh, this is a bold and italic text. That's what the B tag and the I tags do. Center we have discussed. The button tag lets you create a button. For example, this thing right here, something that when the user hovers over, the pointer changes, sometimes the color changes as well. And natively, buttons look very ugly in HTML. So if I use the button tag just like this and do a whatever, hi there, refresh, I see a very ugly button. You might have seen this in some websites. You can sort of style this better, but this is the native button that HTML gives you. Again, HTML, the creators were like very primitive stuff. You want to add styles, you use CSS. This is how an ugly default button looks like, at least in Chrome. This has some more use cases. Like eventually when we get into JavaScript, you will see you can add some more attributes here that let you do something when a button is clicked, which is like the most popular use case of a button, right? If I go to facebook.com, there is a button here. It has a purpose. When you click on the button, something should happen. Sign in, user should be able to sign in. So all buttons needs some functionality associated with them, especially associated with the on click, but how you add it, we will see very soon. Lastly, the input tag is used to create input boxes similar to what you saw here. So this is an input box. This is an input box. If you want to create a similar one on your website, you can use the input tag that looks something like this. Input type equal to text. Input, let's say placeholder equal to username. Refresh, I get an input that says username. I can add my username here. Harkiyat, how do I style this? How do I make this bigger? The Facebook one looked much cleaner. For that, we need CSS. But by default, as I said, so this is an input box. This is an input box. This is a button only. If I go to inspect element, if you look at the elements here, div, image, that's the image here. H2, that's the font here. And lastly, this div, if I keep going inside, you see an input here. You see an input here. You see an input here. These are hidden inputs. Let's go to the actual input here. As you can see, this is an input. Harkirat, why does their input look so much cleaner? Mine looks so ugly because they've added CSS and styled it better. But effectively, as you can see, even this page is just an image, H2, a div with some shadow, input, button, A tag, button. So every page sort of can usually be built using all of these primitives that we've just discussed. There is a bigger list. There is no end to the number of primitives that you can learn in HTML. You don't need to worry about most of these. This is a very good list of primitives that if you know, you're sort of sorted. These are the tags. Okay? If I go back a slide, what did I say? Two important things we need to learn: tags and attributes. Tags, hopefully we understand. Okay? Any website is just created using a bunch of tags. For example, the Zerodha website, if I open the HTML, it's just the body has a bunch of tags inside. As you can see, the top bar is a div, which has another div inside, which has another div inside, which has an A tag here, which has an image inside. So this is an image, and when you click on the image, a redirect happens because this image is wrapped inside an A tag. So inside the A tag, you can put not just text, but also an image. or even more complicated things. And whenever you click on that, the redirect happens, which in this case is just back to the same page. And then the other side, which again has divs. Now this has a new tag introduced here called unordered lists. Don't worry about it. There is no end to the amount of tags you can learn. This is the good list of tags that are good to know. What are attributes though? If you remember, I said image, source equal to something. Attributes are extra things that you can give to a tag. Just putting an image tag isn't enough. Just putting h1 is enough. What does an h1 need to allow you to do? If I put h1, it needs to make the text bold. But if I need to put an image there, it needs to know the URL of the image and a bunch of other things sometimes. How do I put the URL inside photo.png? You could do that, but what if there are multiple things needed? Image also needs sometimes, if you're on an image and you hover over it, you see some text sometimes. Let's say if I hover over this, I don't see it here, but on some websites, if you hover over an image, you see some text. So that also needs to be an attribute that needs to be defined. So just one thing isn't enough. Image needs to have multiple attributes. And for that reason, anything that you need to define or associate inside a tag, you put inside attributes. Every tag can have multiple attributes. Image, the common one is src. The common one is href. For button, a common one is on click. We will come to this when we come to this later on, but on click, basically inside this is where you write some JavaScript and the button on click triggers and something actually happens. And lastly, this thing called ID, which is also something we'll come to. But what are attributes and how are they different from tags? Not interview question, school question in 11th class. Tags are these top level tags that define the structure. Attributes, each tag can have multiple attributes that help define what that specific tag should do. Okay? Enough HTML, CSS, jargon. Let's try to create a page. Only then will we actually learn. So let's create the Zerodha landing page. We already had created the image almost. Let's put a nav bar at the top. Let's put some image here, text, and a button. Let's try to create this. I think you can create this already from all the knowledge that I've given you. So try to create it yourself, or you can follow along. Feel free to choose. You don't have to create you won't be able to create something as good as this because we have not yet introduced CSS, but you can get pretty close. You will see as I sort of code this. All right, let me put code here. All right, I'm going to start coding now. Define a top level div. Define. So Zerodha, as you remember, was an image. So let me also download this image here. Let's see if I can open this. There you go. Oh no, really. How can I download this image? There you go. This is the path to the image. /static/images/logo.svg. I'm going to paste it and I get the image. I'm going to save it. Again in the same folder as logo.svg. Harkirat, what is SVG? Don't worry too much about it yet. It's just another image format that's slightly better, slightly cleaner for 1,000 reasons. But for us, still things are going to be the same. Image src equal to logo.svg/image. Let's see if we have a basic image. We have an image. What is the problem? It's too big. Thankfully, image has a width attribute. Width, let's make it 50. Save, refresh. 50 is a little too small. Let's make it 100. 150. All right. We have the logo at the top. What else do we need? If I go to the Zerodha landing page, what else does it have? It has 5 buttons here. Sign up, about, products, pricing, support. Let me write these down. Sign up, about, product, pricing, support. They need to appear on the right side of the page. For this, you need CSS. If you remember from my slides, I said when we were creating the ugly version, we are going to just HTML. The top bar will look slightly ugly like this. So for now, we don't have to position them well. They'll all be tagged together. Eventually, when we get to CSS, we'll be able to make them slightly cleaner. But let me still put them inside, each one of these inside a span tag. Right, refresh. I see all 5 of these. Not as clean, not as pretty, not on the right side of the page, but it's fine. It's a good start. Okay. My top bar is almost done. Next thing was the image. So image src equal to photo.png slash image, and I also want it to be at the center of the page, so I'm going to put it inside a center tag. Let me just put a width of 200 here. Refresh. Width 200 is really small. 800 here. Refresh, and I see the image at the center of the page. It's getting there. There's some extra space here at the top. For that, unfortunately, you need CSS, or there's another common tag called the BR tag that you can use here. Let me add BR a few times. This might feel a little jarring. Let's do this. BR/BR. So I can just add this break tag, which just puts some space here. Every break tag adds a break here, which basically means put some space here. So this looks sort of decent. What else do I need? Big text, small text, and a button. So going to add some space below the image, followed by big text. What is the text? Invest in everything. Whoopsie daisy. Don't go back a few seconds. All right, invest in everything. Online platform. Okay, just gonna copy it, and this will probably be another few BR tags, followed by h3. Refresh. What is the problem? Would be good to put them inside a center tag. Refresh, invest in everything, online platform. A little too much space here, so let me remove this. Looks pretty good. And what's at the end? There is a button. Sign up now. So as you can see, 38 lines of code are almost enough to create the structure of the Zerodha website. It is still not styled. There's still like some spacing issues, but it's pretty close. Let me look at this side by side. It's getting there. Of course, this is much bigger. This is much smaller, but this is as far as H1 can go. Iske baad, after this, I need to put CSS to make this bigger. This is also slightly leaner, as you can see, not as bold. H1 is very bold. So we will get to how you can style it, but try to go through this code and, understand, look at it. I'm also going to paste a gist of this somewhere in the description. So you can just go to the description and look at this code base on GitHub. There will be a link that you can look at, which has this checkpoint of the code base, which has Zerodha 5 spans, image in the center, this thing, a bunch of breaks above it, this thing, a bunch of breaks below it, this thing, centralized H1 tag, which is this thing, centralized H3 tag, which is this thing, followed by some break, which is this break right here, followed by a sign up now button that's also centralized. We have a basic structure of Zerodha ready using just HTML. What is the problem? Looks very ugly. How do you make it less ugly? You make it less ugly by using CSS. If you might remember, a while back, I added some background color in a few places. That's one thing CSS lets you do. It lets you do 1,000 other things. Let's dive deeper into CSS in the next section. All right. So HTML is done. Let's get into CSS.